Trump's power play. We've got El Salvador, tariffs, and America's boom. This is Christy Lee with Christy Lee's DC Dispatch. First of all, just want to say that it is Holy Week, and I am grateful that we have a president who is acknowledging this and wishing everyone a happy Easter. He posted this on Truth. This Holy Week, Christians around the world remember the crucifixion of God's only begotten Son, our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. And on Easter Sunday, we celebrate his glorious resurrection and proclaim, as Christians have done for nearly 2,000 years, he is risen. And he goes on and on from there, wishing everyone a happy Easter. Isn't it wonderful that we have a president now that will acknowledge the reason for this season, as opposed to what we saw as recently as last year with transsexuals flashing the media, along with Biden trying to find the Easter Bunny. quite a difference that a year makes. And I think it's also important to note that we are hoping and we are praying, and I'm asking you to pray for our leaders, that this is true conviction on Trump's part. He said that he believes his life was saved that day in Butler for a good reason. He declared that during his joint session of Congress last month. He said, "I was saved by God to make America great again." I believe that. So let's continue to pray for him. Now, big day, so much to cover. Trump meeting with the president of El Salvador today. He's meeting with Nayib Bukele at the White House right now. Both leaders teaming up on the migrant deportation effort. So we're keeping an eye on that as we speak. Kara's going to be joining us in just a moment with some highlights. Allison is covering an interesting development, some freedom fighters that are upset with the slow pace of accountability in the DOJ. Like, how many of you are saying, where are the arrests? Where is the accountability for the nonsense? We've seen the exposure. Well, that's the national next step. And so Allison's going to be covering who exactly and why they're frustrated with the slow pace of accountability. Now, all that and more for Lindell TV's White House Live. Every day we have hours of live coverage from the Capitol. But first, I did see that just in this morning, Trump was acknowledging the war between Russia and Ukraine, and he said, "It's Biden's war, not mine. I just got here, and for 4 years during my term, had no problem in preventing it from happening. President Putin and everyone else respected your president. I had nothing to do with this war, but I'm working diligently to get the death and destruction to stop. If the 2020 presidential election was not rigged," in all caps, and it was in so many ways, "that horrible war would never have happened. President Zelensky and crooked Joe Biden did an absolute horrible job in allowing this travesty to begin. There were so many ways of preventing it from ever starting, but that is the past. Now we have to get it to stop, and fast." So sad. I think really speaking to those that voted for peace, strength through or peace through strength, rather. And so he wants to acknowledge that this is not solved yet. It would have never begun under him, but he is working toward that goal. Now, as usual, as has been done lately, we're going to take a quick live look of the markets. I've been watching this all morning, and I can report that at least we've been in the green all day so far. But, you know, the day is still fresh. Just up 89 points right now, 22% up in the Dow. S&P also up, was up quite a bit more than that earlier, but we'll continue to keep an eye on that. And want to remind you to make sure that you're not fully invested in the stock market. If you have all different kinds of investments in the stock market, well, that's diversification, but it's not true diversification. You need asset allocations that are from a broad spectrum and some outside of the market. You can always get your precious metals play with Mike Lindell Gold. You can go to MikeLindellGold.com and get in on the precious metals action, and we have some discounts and specials for you there. You can also get in on the action with Trump's energy play, an investment in oil. This is with Oxford Club. You can go to ChristyOilBoom.com, ChristyOilBoom.com. Find out how you can earn some passive income, and with as little as $25. So again, check that out. Now, how Trump's tariffs are affecting the market sentiment, we'll have that in a moment. But first, I believe Kara's ready to check in with the latest on El Salvador's President Bukele, meeting with the president today. So, Kara, good to see you. Ooh, it looks like a beautiful sunny day in DC. A change from what we saw last week.
Gorgeous. I'm actually hot in DC. So yes, last week was freezing, and now I'm hot. But it is a beautiful day here at the White House. And we
Excellent.
just
So
witnessed a few hours ago, obviously, the president of El Salvador come in and he greeted the president. They seem to have a great chemistry, really a lot of respect for each other, even though there's a tremendous age difference. There was a moment when the president actually commented that Bukele actually looks like it, or looked a few years ago like a teenager. But he took a lot of questions from the media, as you mentioned, on Ukraine and on everything else that's going on right now. And there were some interesting exchanges, including with Caitlin Collins from CNN. President Trump lambasting CNN, calling them fake news. He's always stood by the fact that CNN is, as he likes to say, fake news, and took questions from the media. And there was a couple of really interesting exchanges that I wanted to highlight that I thought were particularly interested. And there was a very long one, and I don't think we're going to get to play it, but just to really summarize, the president went to Pam Bondi and Stephen Miller to really explain that Supreme Court hearing, that Supreme Court case that was 9-0 actually in favor of the Trump administration, basically regarding bringing the gentleman that everybody, or not the gentleman, the illegal that is in El Salvador, that the left mainstream media keeps asking, will he be returned to the United States? So I would really encourage people to go on Rapid X or any other, YouTube, and just really watch that answer, because it was a long answer, but it really explained the legalities, I think, of why that's just impossible and almost preposterous. But really, to summarize this first clip, I wanted you guys to check out. If you guys could play clip number 1, that is when a reporter asked President Trump, that is, how many illegals are you planning to still send to El Salvador, meaning to that prison? And this was the president's answer.
How many illegal criminals are you planning on exporting to El Salvador? And President Bukele, how many are you willing to take from the U.S.?
As many as possible. And I just asked the president, it's this massive complex that he built, jail complex. I said, can you build some more of them, please? As many as we can get out of our country that were allowed in here by incompetent Joe Biden through open borders. Open borders. You probably hear open borders and you can't even understand it, because nobody can understand. Nobody smart or with common sense can understand it. So we have millions of people that should not be in this country that are dangerous, not just people, because we have people, but we have millions of people that are murderers, drug dealers. They've been allowed to come into our country by other countries that were very smart.
So that was the president's response.
He said it best.
Yeah, he said it best. So I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but I find it interesting
Well, I liked
that people
another. Yeah, we're still watching this together, Kara. So he's addressing a lot of the regular questions. I wanted to focus in on these questions related to immigration and their joint effort. Another thing that's of note that I think we should point out is, again, the legacy media framing of this meeting. There was one report that said the most popular dictator meets at the White House, in reference to Kelly. And so it's just that they cannot let go of this narrative that Trump is a dictator and he's palling around with dictators. And so it's interesting that they frame it like that, but he can hold his own too with reporters. I pulled another clip where he was answering and kind of holding the legacy media accountable himself, Kelly. So let's see if we can play that.
How many illegal criminals are you planning on exporting to El Salvador? And President Bukele, how many are you willing to take from the U.S.?
As many as possible. And I just asked the president, it's this massive complex that he built, jail complex. I said, can you build some more?
Well, I'm supposed to be suggesting that I smuggle a terrorist into the United States, right? How can I return him to the United States? Like, I smuggle him into the United States, or what do I do? Of course, I'm not going to do it. It's like, the question is preposterous. How can I smuggle a terrorist into the United States? I don't have the power to return him to the United States.
I love that response from him holding the legacy media accountable. If you missed it, we were playing the wrong clip momentarily real quick, but then the right one, because they do awesome back there. But he says the question, because they were saying, what if, how can you get him back to the United States, about the one that was deported? And he says, the question is preposterous. How can I smuggle a terrorist into the United States? I don't have the power to return. So he calls him about how ridiculous the question in itself was. So I thought that was a good moment.
It was a good moment, and it really just puts the media in their place, and also just anybody. Like it's such a obnoxious, there I don't even know what word to use, mentality that these journalists and just people have in general, like they think that they think that another country would smuggle, like he just said it perfectly, an illegal into the United States, somebody that has now developed such a good relationship, obviously, with President Trump, and is planning, I'm assuming, on working together with him for the duration of his presidency, and asking this man to smuggle somebody into the country that we just sent out of the country, that's not a United States citizen, that's a citizen of El Salvador. These questions are just so ridiculous, and it just blows my mind that these leftist organizations are just still asking the same ridiculous questions. And yeah, I wish I was in that Oval Office today to sort of counter that, because sometimes I feel like our job here as alternate media is not only obviously to check and balance the government, but it's to check and balance the legacy media, which is obviously an arm of the government.
Well, Trump can hold his own, as you said earlier, when he was talking to Caitlin Collins. He's like, "Oh no, that's enough out of you."
Right.
He just put her down.
Yeah, of course. And she's always at the front of the line. She always gets her way to the front somehow. And sometimes I'm combating for that position. But yes, because she's with CNN, I guess, she gets called on often. And sometimes the questions that comes out of, and I'm not just going to single out Caitlin Collins. I do have to see her every day here. But, just some of these reporters, the questions that come out of their mouths, I just can't even believe they're on the level that they're on. That they're at right now, where they're just asking questions that absolutely make no sense, and they're just shouting out questions sometimes, I feel, just to hear their own voices. Like they literally make no sense. So yeah, that was that. And then there was another clip I saw that I wanted to also play, where it was talking about the border, and it was really just the president of El Salvador just giving so much credit to the United States president, to President Trump. And I don't think that the leftist media, like, this is going back to them, really like that. Really seeing another world leader praising, especially from a Latin American country, praising the United States president so much, saying what a remarkable job this president has done with border crossings dropping 95%. And that was at the very beginning of this press conference. So take a listen to this clip and let me know what you think.
Actually, what you're doing with the border is remarkable. It has dropped, what, 95%? It's incredible.
Okay. As of this morning, 99%, 99.1% to be exact.
Why are those numbers not in the media?
Well, they get out with the fake news, like CNN over here doesn't want to put them out because they don't like putting out good numbers. They only like putting out because I think they hate our country, actually.
Yeah,
but it's a shame. You're right. Isn't that a great question? Why don't they put out numbers?
Yeah, 99%. I mean, it's crazy, right?
We're doing
it's
great.
A crazy turnaround.
Christy, could you maybe say a couple of words about the border, how we're doing?
It's just been absolutely phenomenal what a great leader can do. Clear direction. Our laws matter. We should only have people in our country that love us, and the Border Patrol and our ICE officers and law enforcement officers have done fantastic work. So we're proud of them. Now we just need to get the criminals and murderers and rapists and dangerous gang members and terrorist organizations out of our country. So, Mr. President Bukele, we thank you very much for your partnership. It has been wonderful for us to be able to have somewhere to send the worst of the worst and someone to partner with. And we'd like to continue that partnership because it's been a powerful message of consequences. Mr. President, you wanted people to know that there was consequences if you break our laws and harm our people and endanger families. And this is a clear consequence for the worst of the worst, that we have somewhere to put them.
Just Kara, it's pretty remarkable just watching that exchange. And just thinking about that alliance that they have. Because here she is saying, like, thanks for providing us a place to send the worst of the worst. And he's there like, yeah, sure, we're proud to take them. That actually speaks volume in and of itself. If you really think about it, that they're essentially braggadocious about this. Like, he has the capability to handle the worst of the worst, right?
Right. And El Salvador, I believe, is now rated one of the safest places you could possibly visit, or in the world, or at least in the Western Hemisphere. So I think that he's really trying to uphold that reputation and work with the United States and possibly bring even more tourists there to El Salvador. So I think it's a mutually beneficial relationship, obviously. And like you mentioned, they have no issue putting criminals in prison, clearly. And now El Salvador is, according to some organizations, rated a very safe place to live.
Well, it's a testament, I think, as well, that when you apply the hammer of justice, when you uphold the rule of law, how quickly a country can turn around. I mean, from with El Salvador, how quickly he's managed to clean this up when you can invoke fear that there are actual consequences to breaking the law. Another thing that I liked is he said is like, why isn't the media reporting these numbers? And I mean, it makes me think back to COVID. They were obsessed with numbers when they could inflate the COVID deaths and sicknesses and positive tests. But now that we have some positive numbers about cleaning up America, they don't want to be able to report those numbers.
Right. They only want to report death and destruction, even if it's fabricated, obviously. But my favorite clip actually was when they spoke about women's boxing, because I'm a former women's boxing champion, and I just thought it was a really great exchange. Obviously, President Trump does not believe that men should be participating in women's sports, and that topic came up. And the president of El Salvador obviously agrees and is like, that this is just ridiculous. Like, how is this even a conversation? So that was actually my personal favorite exchange, because I really, really continue to fight to keep men, biological men, out of women's sports, especially ones when you're getting hit in the head, like boxing and mixed martial arts. So this was my favorite exchange, if you want to check it out, from today between the president of the United States and El Salvador.
Like, do you allow men to play in women's sports? Do you allow men to box your women and box? Because I know you have a lot of boxing.
That's violence.
That's abuse of a
Violence
woman.
against women.
It's abuse of a woman.
Totally.
But we have people that fight to the death because they think men should be able to play in women's sports. And some of those sports, it wouldn't matter much, but it still matters. But some of them are very dangerous for women.
Some years ago, I would say a decade ago or so, women rights movements were pressuring so that we enacted specific laws to avoid men abusing women. And I think those laws were great because there were a lot of men abusing women. But now some of the same people are trying to backtrack on that and actually trying to make new laws allowing men to abuse women in sports. So actually, that doesn't make sense.
Sports.
It doesn't make sense.
It's crazy. You know, they have weightlifting records, right?
Yeah.
A woman gets up, lifts weights, she's incredible. A guy gets up and beats her by 100 pounds. What are you going to do? A record that hadn't been broken in 18 years. You know, they put on an ounce, quarter of an ounce, eighth of an ounce for 18 years. Now they have a guy come up, ping. The whole thing is crazy. But they continue to fight. And I don't like talking about it because I want to save it for just before the next election. I say to my people, don't even talk about it because they'll change. And but I watched this morning, there was a congressman fighting to the death for men to play against women in sports. And you say to yourself, why? What are they doing, right? What are they doing? But your country's not too big in that.
No, of course not. We're big in protecting women.
Good. That's right. It's a very important form of protection, too.
And as you can see, most of my cabinet are women, so...
That's impressive.
Yeah.
That's why you run.
They're not DEI hires or anything.
They
They're
can
just
be
great at what they do. Right?
That's right. This is very impressive.
Yeah,
This is a first. We've had women, but we've never had three of them right here. That's
4 and 3
And
men.
look who we have.
Man, he certainly did bring an entertainment back to the White House. I love how he's like, and ping, and then I like how Bukele was saying, I have a lot of women here with me, but it's not DEI or anything. You know, it's just it's fun, it's natural, it's not so like politician-esque, if you will. I'm making up my words here. But it's just a nice, natural conversation. And it's good to see countries coming together, having a logical conversation like that.
Yeah, correct. And what they mentioned too, this is abuse of women. And, you can call Bukele a dictator. I don't, again, not an expert on his politics. I'm sure that there's arguments in both directions. But when you have liberals arguing that men should be able to abuse women by beating them up in a boxing ring, and you have the nerve to call somebody else a dictator, I mean, it's just really questionable. So the hypocrisy is just crazy. So this guy's saying that's abuse of women. We protect our women. And they're pointing fingers at him saying dictator, but I think that, they are somewhat dictators continuing to fight for the right for biological men to literally beat up women in a boxing ring. It's just bizarre.
Yeah, and you obviously can speak to that as a former boxing champ. And, it's like we giggle this off, but there's women that have been highlighted as getting extremely injured, very hurt by the perpetuation of such an illogical effort by the Democratic Party. So, Kara, I want to make sure that you can get back to covering this meeting and anything else that comes out of it. But thanks for checking in with us.
Thanks, Christy.
You bet. So as we were talking about the legacy media, we support critical questions of an administration. That is the responsibility of a true journalist, is to keep the leaders in check. But the leading questions, the leading narratives, is what's got to stop. It's the continued effort of propaganda on the American people. And Stephen Miller, he dropped a hammer earlier today, I believe it was, when now not only are they not reporting the numbers, but they're trying to indicate or trying to give the impression that these deportations are slowing down. And here's what he had to say with that assertion.
El Salvador, as part of our effort to eradicate this foreign terrorist organization from the United States. But there's no upper limit to the agreement. We're going to continue to send foreign terrorist aliens to El Salvador as well as to many other countries.
There you go. Now, I want to make sure I have time to cover what's happening in the market. As I said earlier, in the green today, as of right now, just shot way up again. And a lot of this has to do with the confident plays that Trump is making, giving consumers, giving investors that degree of confidence they need to stick it out, stay in the market, and have faith in where the economy is going. And here's what Trump had to say on Truth when it comes to tariffs, because again, the legacy media tried to spin and act like something new had happened. Nothing new had happened. There were exceptions carved in, and he wanted to set the record straight. He said in that Truth, nobody is getting off the hook with tariffs for these unfair trade balances and non-monetary tariff barriers that other countries have used against us, especially not China, which by far treats us the worst. So again, the legacy media was trying to act like Trump was backing off in some way, and there's going to be these exceptions with when it comes to some chips and technology goods. And Howard Lutnick did a really good job at setting the record straight. This actually was already carved in as a separate thing, a temporary exception that would be made. And so this was twisted, and they're setting the record straight. Watch this.
The notice that went out Friday night saying that electronics, a wide range of electronics, including smartphones, including components used to make microchips, that these are now exempt from the reciprocal tariffs. Why that move?
Well, remember, those products are going to be part of the semiconductor sectoral tariffs, which are coming. So you're going to see this week there'll be a register in the Federal Registry. There'll be a notice put out. That is different types of work. So we're going to do that. We did that in autos. The president's going to do it for pharmaceuticals, and he is going to do it for semiconductors. So all those products are going to come under semiconductors, and they're going to have a special focus type of tariff to make sure that those products get reassured. We need to have semiconductors. We need to have chips, and we need to have flat panels. We need to have these things made in America. We can't be reliant on Southeast Asia for all of the things that operate for us. So what he's doing is he's saying they're exempt from the reciprocal tariffs, but they're included in the semiconductor tariffs, which are coming in probably a month or two. So these are coming soon. You shouldn't think this is really...
So what he's saying is making that delineation that that's separate, that that's not going away, that was already worked in, that they would go into effect later. And so not included as a separate pause or some kind of backing away or backing off from Trump. And he says we need to bring this manufacturing here. And it looks like it's working. NVIDIA is going to produce a whole supercomputer in the U.S. Watch this.
And by the way, as a footnote here, NVIDIA just said it will produce supercomputers entirely built in the U.S.
There you go. And on top of that, we have that Taiwan, a semiconductor manufacturing company, is going to invest $25 billion in Arizona. This coming from X Alerts as something new, and will build a third microchip factory. So it appears that there's companies that are getting ahead of this already, that we're making this a reality. Nevertheless, from the New York Times, China is halting its critical exports as this trade war intensifies, and Beijing has suspended exports of certain rare earth minerals and magnets that are crucial for the world's car, semiconductor, and aerospace industries. So this goes to show you that obviously if Trump were backing off, China wouldn't have announced this in retaliation, if you will. So it's important to keep an eye on that. UAW President Sean Fain continues to tell the American people why we need these tariffs. Watch.
We've been very clear. We do believe, and we know, when it comes to auto, when it comes to heavy truck and agricultural implement, we know that tariffs will influence these companies to do the right thing and reinvest in this country and reinvest in factories in this country. It's interesting. Stellantis, as Trump was announcing the tariff, announced at the same moment that they were going to lay off 800 people. That didn't change as Trump was making an announcement. To me, it's just trying to bait people. At the end of the day, we believe that Stellantis and these companies will bring work back because of these tariffs. I mean, look what they've done without them. Let's talk about the realities of what, and this is the thing, I've been reading a lot of this lately. Going back, in 1992, I voted for Ross Perot. You know why I voted for Ross Perot? For one reason, because he was the only candidate that talked about how devastating NAFTA would be to American jobs and to our manufacturing base. And he talked about that giant sucking sound. I've read this book here in the last week, Save your jobs, save our country. Why NAFTA must be stopped now. What's interesting?
And now you have a president that's finally trying to repair the damage done from NAFTA. And he was not giving up on this fight. He's not backing down when it comes to tariffs. Trump is a fighter. And it turns out that he remains in excellent health, very transparent report coming from the House physician, which is something we did not get from the previous administration, is a transparent look at his health. And he remains in excellent health. Of course, he's saying that he has the best health ever, perfect score, of course, because that's Trump's style. But also in fighting style, he made an appearance at UFC. Let's just play a little bit of that.
Ladies and gentlemen,
And he was joined by his grandkids. It was a nice sight to see. And for those that are frustrated with the lack of action, Trump still does face opposition, but there are some things that are making headway. The FBI official who approved the bogus Steele dossier has been placed on administrative leave. So finally, some action there. The fact that Otten was not fired from the FBI and prosecuted for his part in the Russiagate conspiracy is a national embarrassment, but that he has finally been placed on administrative leave, according to Headline USA. And Speaker Johnson is speaking on the continued lawfare of President Trump and the response. Watch.
We've had real abuse of this system where these individual judges will issue nationwide injunctions to stop President Trump's agenda. It's been abused. The statistics show it. Remember, 67% of all national injunctions over the last 100 years have been issued against one president. His name is Donald J. Trump. And 92% of those were issued by Democrat-appointed judges to the bench. We got to stop that.
Can you believe that anyone tries to argue that there wasn't an agenda here, that there's actual justice, when 92% of the people who are deciding what happens to you or what needs to happen are diametrically opposed to you. 92% of Democrat judges are, and the highest record of injunctions. I mean, come on, like, let's just be logical and fair with what he's been up against. All right, we have so much more coverage in store for you, so keep it right here. Allison is going to be bringing you more of the calls for accountability here shortly. Kara's going to stay on top of the visit from the El Salvador President Bukele, and so much more. Stick around for Emerald's half hour, as well as Vanessa's. So much to see coming straight from the Capitol. So thanks for watching.